Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for reading and everybody who was of service. Um, for information about our seventh tradition, please use the Square Pay link that I put into the chat. It is also listed on the YouTube video. So if you have questions about that, that is the link to use. So yes, thank you for any donations to that. The format for this workshop is getting out of our own way. And first up, we've got Alvin E, who's going to be sharing for up to 30 minutes. So please help me welcome Alvin. And let me unmute you there, Alvin. Oops. And there we go. You're good.
All right. Let me see here. My name's Alvin, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Alvin.
How's everybody doing today? I'm grateful to be clean. Grateful to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you, Matt, for asking me to share my experience, strength, and hope. Yeah, I'm kind of fond to the Arizona area. I met my wife at the World Convention in 1998 in San Jose, and she was living in Arizona. And over the years, my clean date is May 9th, 1986. I've been back and forth in the greater Las Vegas area. You know, I have, at one time, I had up to 8 grandchildren in that area. And I can't count the many times that I've been to the meeting place, Recovery and Beyond, to do a meeting there, man. And I learned early on that meeting makers make it, right? You know, I'm hoping that everybody is well. I'd like for you guys, if we could have a moment of silence. My brother had surgery on Thursday, and he's still in the hospital. He'll be in for 6 or 7 days. It's not related to the COVID-19. It was, you know, planned surgery that he had. So if we could have a brief moment of silence. He's a member. He's got 34 years clean himself. For my brother, my twin brother, actually, the guy that brought me into recovery, I appreciate it. Just a moment of silence for him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. When Matt called me to ask me to share, you know, it's an honor to share your experience, strength, and hope. And, you know, when he gave me the topic, you know, getting out of my way, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, me to get out of my way. And what I've come to recognize that, you know, for me as a member of this fellowship and coming into Narcotics Anonymous, man, you know, the challenges that I faced early on, you know, with getting out of my way, you know, and it's been a lifelong journey to keep, you know, doing the right thing, you know, for the right reason, you know, because I didn't come to Narcotics Anonymous, you know, or into my addiction, you know, not doing the right thing, you know, every once in a while. I'm not that guy. You know, my hometown is Washington, D.C. I grew up there. You know, I got clean there. I went to high school there. I finished high school. I went to college. I finished college. I'm a college graduate. Right now, you know, I was able to get a job and retire. You know, and prior to coming into, you know, treatment and into the fellowship, you know, there were certain things that I was able to do. But what I recognized at the time was that, you know, I was living that double life. You know, drugs had become was what I would call recreational. You know, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, you know, a love child, you know, and we were on our own way of doing things. And one day I realized, man, that, you know, I was no longer just getting high on the weekends, you know, that I was getting high every day. You know, I was living to use and using to live, you know. You know, I was still stubborn, you know, in regards to the clear message, you know, that I was getting from the universe, that my life was unmanageable and that I was powerless. And what I tried to do is I tried to plow through. You know, I was resistant to any change. You know, I was living in denial. And what I recognize denial is as a shock absorber to, you know, my current reality. And because my current reality was such a freaking mess, you know, the bigger the more harsh my reality became, the bigger, the cushion of denial that I had to be in. Um, at the end, I was just uh, hanging out at this spot in DC. It was called Jimmy's Barbershop, right? And it was a little shop that we go in the back, and they had the dope dealer concierge. Chico was there, and I remember one day, man, I was going at it so hard that Chico said, "Man, twin, why don't you just go home?" Right? And when the dope house concierge is telling you to go home and you still have money, man, that was, that should have been an awakening for me, but it wasn't. At the time, my brother was in recovery. He had bought me a basic text, and I remember trying to read that basic text when I was high. Oh boy, that is some shit that don't work. But I still have that basic text. That he gave me that basic text in 1985, and and he was in the program. I reached out to him, um, asked him, for some help, and I'm here to tell you that, if you stay here and we got family members or friends out there, they may get here, right? One of the things that they told him and they tell me is, don't go searching for them, right? You stay here until they get here. He didn't go searching for me. He did try to tell my mother, who I was living with, and I was sleeping on her couch and stealing out of her purse, a 33-year-old man. He did try to tell her to put me out. I finally was able to let go of that resentment after I got clean and worked some steps. Um, and I went into a program, and this is not an endorsement of treatment, it's just my story. But I know many addicts that have come straight from the street and have found recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. And I heard the message of hope in the H&I program. And one of the things that I heard was early on was that you don't have to use even if you want to, right? And that was the first indication for me, of trying to change my thinking and my approach, to life. Because, for so many years, if the thought came into my head that I wanted to get high, then I got high. Right? And, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And, and even in times when, I thought that, I didn't want to get high, on any particular day, on any particular morning. I would start out with with that thought, but, I would pick up one, not recognizing that one is too many, 1,000 never enough. And what would happen is that one would lead to 1,000, and I would start out singing like Bill Withers, "It's a Lovely Day," but by the end of the day, I'd be looking like Pookie from New Jack City. And I did that over and over again. And so the people, the H&I people there, had came with I saw a glimmer of hope, in them. Right? I didn't know what it was. This program, NA, I hadn't even heard of NA prior to coming to treatment. Well, prior to coming to my first couple of meetings with my brother, right, and then going to treatment. I'd never heard of the NA program. I didn't know what it was, but I did recognize a couple of things that they were talking about. They were talking about doing some things differently. They were talking about living a life, finding happiness in their lives, that they had become fathers and brothers and, a responsible member of society, that they were connected back with their family, things that I had lost in, over the last dozen years, as my addiction, started to slowly consume my life. And those were the things that, that I connected with early on in my recovery. Not so much that, the literature, it wasn't a lot of literature, but there was some literature. It was the basic text, and we had the white book. But basically that was it, and some IPs. But I started connecting with the people there before I even started, looking at the steps and traditions on the walls, because they were talking about, things changing and things being different with their life. They were talking about their behavior and how, working a program of recovery helped them change their behavior and helped them look at their life differently. They were, one of the things that I read in the Living Clean book, the chapter Getting Out of My Way, it talked about failure is, experience, strength, and hope in disguise. And, you know, um, they were talking about their failures, but they were sharing their experience, strength, and hope, in recovery. They were talking about, things. I was having my own personal experiences early on in recovery, that, things weren't always going in my way. I thought that all my relationships would be repaired. I thought that the children that, that I hadn't had relationships and their mothers who I hadn't paid child support to, that they would come around and they would see the new me. And and when that didn't happen, I had to go back to the meetings, and and the members were there to patch me up and help me get to the other side of of what my life was. And what I did was I immersed myself in recovery. I allowed you people to carry me, and to be and to be the hope for me, right? That things would get better. I couldn't see as far as today's meeting when I got here. You know, I'm, I look at myself today and the person that I've grown to, but when I first started out, man, I couldn't see beyond that. But you guys, I could see you. I could show up at a meeting. I could sit in that meeting, and I could listen to you talk about how your lives were going. And we would go out afterwards. The meeting after the meeting was so huge then, right? You didn't I didn't have as many meetings to go to as I have today. And I don't I was on a meeting last night with some of my predecessors, the guys. Mark M from Bethesda, Maryland, was celebrating 35 years. And it took me back down that road when my early recovery, and how important it was to stay connected to people, and people in recovery, and and the life that they were living. And I knew their stories, I knew their children, and we kind of grew up together. I came into Narcotics Anonymous, I was 33 years old, right? And now I'm 67 years old, right? I'm a guy that gets Social Security now, and I have a pension now from the job that I had. My medical provider is Medicare Part B. I can remember back when I first started. I couldn't see myself, you know, getting to this place, even though I knew it. There were no people in recovery at the time that I got clean that had retired at the time. There were people who had time in the program, but they weren't people who were doing that. So this has been, my family, and those folks and grandparents who had made those decisions. But for members who I had an experience with in terms of coming into the program, that just wasn't something that we were doing at that time. And so this road that I'm traveling now is a road that I'm gaining the experience, from experienced members here who are telling me that these are the things that they're doing. And I never saw myself, getting to this place, right? But look at where I'm at now. About 10 years ago, let me back up a little bit. My early recovery was just that. They told me that meet and makers make it. For the first 5 years of my recovery, I went to meetings. I went to meetings and I went to meetings. You could count on one hand the amount of meetings that I missed in 5 years. And I remember around year 5, my mother died, and I went to a meeting, and one of the members there asked me, how could I go to a meeting, right after my mom died? And I asked him, I said, well, where do you want me to go? And it was that foundation, that people were talking about, that encouraged, that helped me make the change, that I've made in my life, and then I'm continuing to make in my life today. Getting out of my way has been a process for me. One of the ways that that I do that consistently is, I keep I work on my daily maintenance and my recovery. I'm a guy who who starts his day reading his just for the day. I'm a guy who starts his day, who gets up and um, says his morning prayer. I'm a guy who starts his day before, excuse me, before I have my coffee, before I, do my just for the day. I mean, before I turn on Sports Center or any of the news or read, anything online or turn on Facebook, I make that commitment, because what I found is that, it's easier for me, to stay connected, you know, um, and than it is for me to reconnect, or as my friend Derek likes to say, if I stay ready, I don't have to get ready, right? And that has been, one of the ways that, I work towards getting out of my way. I'm the kind of person, man, that has made some significant changes in his life over the years. I told you guys I met my wife in 1998. As a matter of fact, today is our wedding anniversary. We met in 98 and we got married in 2003. So it's been 17 years that we have been married, right? And I still love my wife, right? And she's in recovery, and she's just been, a help. If you want to find out, a little bit about your character defects, get in a relationship. So I've been in a long-term relationship, so I had an opportunity to look closely at, my character defects and, the things that I need to work on and change. And so, and I have embraced that. I've consistently had a sponsor, since I've been in Narcotics Anonymous. I've consistently had, a home group since I've been in Narcotics Anonymous. I've consistently been in service since I've, been in Narcotics Anonymous. So what all of those things help me do is they help me stay, in an atmosphere, of recovery, and it that helps me stay connected, to people, who are working on themselves. And as a result, I get to work on myself. I get to be around people who are connected to, power greater than themselves. And I get to, connect to people who my higher power will use, to help me change, you know, to help me see the light and to help me see the way forward when sometimes, my own thinking will get in the way. Um, I've, I'm living the best life that I could ever live now, but it hasn't always been like that, even clean, right? I told you guys in year 5, my mom had passed away, and my mom was my biggest enabler. And when she died, but I was clean, right? Around year 17, I got a phone call, and my son had been murdered. And, that was something that, even today, I still, get challenged, when I think about him, when I walk by the pictures that I have hanging up in the house. And, my son was he was not a member. They say you're an addict when you say you're an addict. One of the things I learned though is that, if you don't surrender, somebody else gets to tell your story. And Junior didn't surrender. So I get to tell his story. And, and one of the things that, I wanted for Junior was I wanted recovery for him, but, he didn't want recovery for himself. And they found him. Somebody had stabbed him multiple times, and he died. He died like an addict, does at times. He died alone, right? And it wasn't in a one of those situations where you see on a one of those hospital movies, or ER or anything like that. He died in a hospital, surrounded by strangers, right? And one of the things that I was not prepared for my son, to die like that. Um, but I was prepared, for what life was going to bring me, right? So when, that showed up, I did what I had been taught to do the prior years, was, I leaned into the fellowship, right? And, I allowed you guys to carry me. I allowed you guys to hold me up when I couldn't stand on my own. And, I allowed you, I allowed God to work through people in the rooms, to, you know, to heal the wound, right, that had been created by that loss. And it was a significant year for me because I had a sponsee that died in December, and my sponsor at the time had died the following March. So within, a 9-month period, I lost a son, a sponsee, and a sponsor, right? So that was a dark period for me, emotionally, right? But what I had been taught, was that, was to put one foot in front of the other. And, this might sound like a simplistic way of, approaching it, and as I'm sitting here talking, I'm listening to myself, I can appreciate it if you kind of looked at it that way, man. But, when you're in the storm, Narcotics Anonymous, is your shelter, right? Um, and that's what it was. And I was in a storm that I hadn't created, and I was powerless to change, right? And what that helped me understand was, the level of powerlessness, what that really meant, not powerless over, you know, um, whether or not I wanted to date this person, or powerless over whether she, stopped wanting to date me, all the experiences that I had up until that time, where I could attribute powerlessness to and acceptance, you know, uh, didn't compare, to those collective experiences, but what I was able to do, I was able to gain and use that experience, to help others. And when a member asked me, man, about sharing that, experience and how hard that was, and I told him, I said, man, I don't get to plan the experience, I just get to share it, right? I learned early on, you don't plan the outcome, right? You make plans, but you don't plan the outcome, and that's not an outcome I would have planned for myself, right? It's just an outcome, that I had to live with. And, so what I did was, I stayed open so members could come into my life, right? And help me, members who had that experience, members who hadn't helped the experience, but just who wanted to sit with me and, and hold my hand and, and let me know that I could stay clean, even through this, right? And I'm here, to share that experience with others, right? About 10 years ago, I left the DC area and moved to Vegas. I'm in Las Vegas now. Started working at a treatment facility. Never thought I'd do that, because one of the things that, that came as a result of me, my son's death, because he was 21 years old, was, it was kind of hard to kind of work with young people, because I kind of kept seeing him, in them. But I'm able to do that now, in the work that I do. I was, it was a big change for me because I'd never left the actual area. I mean, even after I gotten clean, I'd done some travel, around the country. But I went to school in DC. I went to college, to high school. I worked there and retired there. And then all of a sudden, at the age of 56, you know, I ran away from home, and so I wound up here in Vegas. I love living in Vegas, and the last 10 years for me has been, had some challenges, but I've been, um, open to the challenge. The wife that I had met in Arizona slash California at the convention, had a knee surgery, and as a result of her knee surgery, she was prescribed some oxys and opiates, and long story short, she she had she relapsed, and that was a big struggle, not only for her, but for me, because she was my partner, and but I had to allow her, to go through her experience, um, and it was some weathering that I had to do, and she was able to kind of right her ship, and she's clean today, and that's what's important, is that she's clean today, right? And I had to really, really be open-minded to that experience, because I had the time, and there was a point in time when I was saying to myself, well, why can't she get clean? Don't you know that I'm clean? And there were even some points, and some dark thoughts for me about well, you know her addiction is affecting my recovery. That's where I was able to get help from my sponsor, because at the time I had a sponsor whose wife had gone through the same experience. you know um that was once again the universe showing up for me and helping me to get out of my way, because her relapse wasn't about it's not about you, Alvin. It's about her and her recovery, and you and your recovery, and I had to practice the principle of acceptance. It's like, okay, if you're going to be practicing acceptance, acceptance is just not a word that you write. Acceptance is a word that it's a principle that you practice, in the program. And so, I was able to do that. I was able to step away from, her program, and allow her to do that. Um, so over the last 10 years, I look at my life, man, as, as the joy that it is, not the perfect life. I don't have the perfect life, but I have a good life, right? I'm a man who, works a program. I sponsor guys here. I work, do regional service out here. I moved here in 2010. I had one phone number. I had one phone number, to somebody in Las Vegas, and now my phone is filled with numbers for people, all over this region, right? And I had to do something different for me, right? I had to, get out of the way of my preconceptions, right? Because I come from an urban area in Washington D.C., and now I'm in kind of a southwestern mode, and I came with some prejudices and some biases about the West, and if you ever met anybody from D.C., or ever met anybody from the East Coast, we come with our own little attitude, and our own little persona. And what this move out here has allowed me to do, man, is to expand my thinking. And not just the program. I'm pretty good in the program when it comes to meetings, but outside of Narcotics Anonymous, my walk, matching my talk, right? And just because a person, looks a different way, or talks a different way, or eats a different way, doesn't make that person, doesn't make me better or worse. It just makes them human, and it makes me human. I am, please take the next 5 minutes to wrap up your share. All right, I've got it on time. Thank you, brother. I am, living my best life today. I had a guy share the other day at a meeting. He talks about, living a better life in Narcotics Anonymous. And, one of the things that I recognize for me is not only has Narcotics Anonymous given me a better life, but it's given me a superior life. My life would, I can't describe, to you, the difference between the person that I was when I got here and the person that I am today. The risk that I have taken, you know, um, the changes that I have made, have only come as a result of working a program of recovery. You know, um, I remember hearing a guy out of Detroit, who talked about uh, panhandling in front of a restaurant out there, and he said that he used to panhandle out there in front of the restaurant. And now he owns the restaurant, right? And that's kind of like, how I look at it. Things that did when I got here, the things that I didn't think that I could do, that I have done, and one of the things that he shared was that, if he'd have known, how good God was going to be to him, he'd have taken bigger risk. And, I'm just grateful that I was able to take this risk and come out here. I'm just grateful that I was able to, come to believe and turn my will and my life over to the care of a God of my understanding, and that has been the gift for me. That has been the biggest gift that you guys have given me. Not the houses that I own, not the business that I own, not the pension and the things that I have, but the biggest gift has been, you guys have directed me and guided me in a way that I have a relationship with a God of my understanding. I didn't have that when I came here. All I had was, the same relationship that I had with the God that I was a kid. The only prayer that I knew was, now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord the soul to keep. That was my relationship. But through coming here, I've learned the serenity prayer and the third step prayer, and I've learned that my God that I have is my greatest source of strength and courage. So, and that courage is the courage that I get, and the courage that I use to change. So I hope that, something I shared, helps someone. I hope that you guys continue to stay safe, in everything that you do. I plan to. Thank you, Matt, for asking me to share, and I'll keep coming back.
Awesome. Thank you, Alvin. I'm going to unmute everybody so we can give Alvin some love.
Hi, Alvin.
Just got the jeans and the
Sharing.
glasses.
Much, Alvin. And let me mute you there. All right, you're muted. Next up, all the way from Sweden, we have Anders going to share for 30 minutes his experience, strength, and hope on getting out of his own way. And you are good to go.
Hi, family. My name is Anders, and I'm an addict. Can you all hear me? Great. I hear my own voice, but that's good. Oh man, I get a little bit nervous now because English is not my primary language. It's my secondary, and I need to think in Swedish and translate it into English. But I do as best I can. Let me see. Thanks so much, Alvin, for what you said. It was a great share. And thanks for asking me to participate. I met a couple of you members from Arizona at the convention in Denmark a couple of years ago, and we stayed in contact since then. And great people, really, really great people. And I'm a reluctant speaker because I think I'm so bad in English, but I do as good as I can. And I will tell you about my story. And you need to know that I got clean 8th of March, 1994. And there was no basic text at that time. There was no, in Swedish, there was no literature at all. It was like typewritten papers with Tipp-Ex on. And that kind of stuff, and nobody knew anything about recovery. Actually, we knew don't take drugs. That was the treatment center told us, and don't take drugs and avoid people that uses. But first time I came to a meeting, I felt really welcome, and that was at a prison. You see, there was something in the cafeteria. Someone offered cookies and coffee, and I went there and I saw all my old dealers there, and I thought they were dead. So there, slowly, I got hope. But when I came at my first real meeting in my home group that I still have 26 years later, I felt so welcome, and I am kind of lucky because I have an appetite for life. I'm not shy. I can take the word and speak and behave like that. That's I see people that are so afraid of opening up. But I was so tired of my own ways, but I still didn't want to quit totally. I just wanted to have ease the pain of what certain drugs did to me, because I didn't know anything about addiction. I didn't know. I didn't know that I could understand that if I took a drug, it led to more drugs and criminality and that kind of stuff. I understand that, but not as I do today. Uh, and the great power I felt, because I really felt I can make this, because I got new friends, really good friends that are we started to hang out and doing things and coming up early in the meetings and stay out after meetings and doing stuff. I felt this is the best friends I ever had, and I still are really close friends with some of them. Some have died, of course. Many is chosen, but few is called. Many is called, but few is chosen. This is the nature of this disease. People don't take it for serious. But as I said earlier, there was no literature and that kind of stuff. And when I had like 18 months clean, people went to the World Convention in Paris. I was on my way too, but I couldn't afford it. But they brought speaker tapes back when they came. And finally, I understood what it was about. It was about working the steps. But when the youth, I was 27, so that was not a youth, but in Sweden, I was really, really young. And the thing is, me and my other buddies wanted to have something that was not available because no one knew anything about it. So I worked at a place, and there was a guy who said, I didn't, this was like 1996, maybe 1997. I was not aware of something called internet. But my friend at work said, hey, there is Narcotics Anonymous on a news board. And he explained it. It's like where you can put stuff on, ask for stuff. Really? So I was really hooked. And really interested in that, and said, can you please, because I had 2 speaker tapes. I had one with a lady called Fran that lives in Hawaii, and a man called Vito from, I think he lives in Florida. But anyway, could you ask for speaker tapes? And 1 week later, that my coworker said, hey, you got an answer here. It was a man in Maryland that said, hey, I send you some tapes. Oh yeah, okay, tell me about that. But actually, 10 days later, it came a box, and it also came a coffee mug and a t-shirt and a telephone number. And I was not aware of the time difference. So I called him like noon my time and mumbled something in really, really, my English is not that good, but there was worse at that time. And he recorded that, so I heard it since that. And he became my sponsor. He was my sponsor for 10 years. I'm not sure if he's here and listen to this, but his name is Mike, and he lives in Maryland, Eastern Maryland. And he's a great, great guy. And he helped me to be a part of. He sent me literature and stuff, and guided me through the steps. And there was not many people that in Sweden that had worked as 12 steps at that way. People think when they see about the steps, it's on the wall, and that's all I need to know. It used to be like that when I was new, but today there is so really, really good for many newcomers, because there is a Swedish program like stuff with pamphlets and books and all that for newcomers. And I see people that are really young that come in and has the ability to really recover, and that's wonderful. It's wonderful. So the topic is to getting out of my own way. And yes, I have with a few seeds, I can sow a whole forest that I immediately are lost in. I create my own problems. Hand me a credit card, and I'm so totally lost. And I need to. So the greatest gift, except that I don't need to humiliate myself with using and getting drugs, is God. When I came, I hated God because I was misled of what God was. God is not religion, but that was what I thought. So I was really like, fuck you, you fucking fuck. So but God is so, I can't say what it is, but it's something like a fluffy cloud that I can fall into when life is hard, and it gets hard even with time because I create my own problem. I take the wrong decision at the wrong time. I don't speak to my wife or my kids. I don't take. Recovery starts with responsibility, and that's beginning of putting the cap of toothpaste at morning. That's some days it is like that. Getting out of my own way. It's as I've been to States 4 times, and I knew I have a couple of friends at listening to this that I met in Florida, Meredith, for example. And it's the great thing with NA is it's a worldwide fellowship because it's not in just Arizona. It's big in. I think we have like 69,000 meetings weekly, and think of that. So like in India and Asia, it's so big. In Iran, it's so big, so big, so big. So they have, when they have conventions in Iran, they have like football stadiums with people. They needed to move a distribution center for literature over there because there were so many people. But of course, land with heroin, of course, and it's so great that these programs are available for people in so many languages. So let me see. The coolest thing with getting out of my own way is that I allow God to be part of my life. And actually, I hated God and what I thought it all was about, religion, churches, and that kind of stuff. I married my wife, Mariana. That's a really sweet name for an addict, right? But anyway, she as a part of church, and they have really been really nice to me when I came there with her, and that's so great. So, and she says, Anders, your believing God is bigger than many people in the church. But I don't believe in religion. I have such stories, but they're so really strange. But I need to tell you about a story that are really it's too complicated to tell because I don't know the word for it. Or I feel like I'm so. I hope I'm doing okay. Thank you. It feels like I'm. Thank you, Meredith. Okay, I need you to tell this story anyway, but it's not. It's about God, and this is great. When I was new, there was a man called Jorge at my meetings, and this is this is one of the most humbled men I never ever met. And he died during a liver transplant a couple of years after I met him. And the thing is, he had a son that went out and used. And he was engaged with my friend Anna. And Anna, which I still have contact with, is a close friend. And she lives in Stockholm. That's 500 kilometers from here. And every time we have a speaker jam or something, oh, Anna, come down and speak, come down and speak. And one day I managed to have her come. But I have one condition, she said. I want to go to the grave, Jorge's grave. And when we was at that grave, I was really sad and was really feeling God's presence. And she went to and we prayed for the son of the man. And the thing is, she went up to the speaker jam and shared, and it was great. But 3 days later, the telephone service called me and if I could take a newcomer to a meeting. And guess who that was? It was that son. And he was involved in very, very severe criminality in this town with gangs when they shoot on each other. But I took him to a meeting, and a couple of days later, he went out and lived with me for 3 months, and he's still clean. He's coming up on 4 years clean. And wouldn't be possible if I was not open to see what God gave me. And I still wonder, how does the people in the telephone committee know to call me about this guy? It must be God. So I feel I can't speak 30 minutes. I feel like I will stop there because I feel empty. And I hope I have shared some of my experience with you. And I'm really, really grateful for being here. And imagine of thinking in Swedish and say it in English. But thank you so much, ARCNA.
Thank you, Anders. All right, let's unmute and give him some love.
So now the
Very
discovery,
much.
really.
That was great.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, they
Thank you both. That was wonderful. That was absolutely great. So again, thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Anders. Really appreciate both of you giving your experience, strength, and hope. Before we close up the meeting, we are going to read We Do Recover, and I've got Marty who's going to be doing that. Maya is going to screen share for you, and I'm going to unmute you here, Marty. And give it 1 second while Maya pulls up that screen share. There we go. And go ahead, Marty.
All right, I'm next. My name is Marty. When at the end of the road, we find that we can no longer function as a human being, either with or without drugs. We all face the same dilemma. What is there left to do? There seems to be this alternative: either go on as best we can to the bitter ends, jails, institutions, or death, or find a new way to live. In years gone by, very few addicts have ever had this last choice. Those who are addicted today are more fortunate. For the first time in man's entire history, a simple way has been proving itself in the lives of many addicts. It is available to us all. This is a simple, spiritual, not religious program known as Narcotics Anonymous.
Awesome. Thank you, Marty. And again, thank you to both of our speakers and to everybody else who was of service during this meeting. We will be closing with the third step prayer after a moment of silence for the addicts still sick and suffering both inside and outside of this room. Everybody will stay muted. Also, just want to let everybody know the next meeting, the next workshop will be coming up at 1 p.m. Arizona time. So that's in approximately 56 minutes from now. So definitely hope to see everybody there. Go grab something to eat, go grab some coffee, and come back for some more recovery. So again, after a moment of silence, we will go ahead with the third step prayer and everybody will stay muted. Many of us have said, take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery, and show me how to live.